The Sega Genesis and Mega Drive is getting another brand new game, and this time it's a fighter called Lunatic Fighters. My name's Mike, and this is the Retro Gamer Boy Show. Brazil seems to be a hub for Mega Drive development, and today we're going to be looking at a brand new indie title for the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis. It's another fighter called Lunatic Fighters. So the team behind Lunatic Fighters have put together this special demo for me, which I'm really grateful for. It gives us an opportunity to play through Lunatic Fighters. Lets me tell you what I think of the game and how it plays. So it looks like we're going to be treated to a little bit of an intro here, a bit of a storyline. Looks quite cool. And they've gone for this kind of digitized look, to the Killer Instinct look, which is quite cool, where you've got pre-rendered characters, and then you digitize them out and bring them into the game. Right, let's take a look at what we've got. We've got 3 options here. Credits. That's cool. So anyone that backs Lunatic Fighters will be in the credits, which is cool. So they've got a kind of a Kickstarter up, the Brazil version of Kickstarter, but we'll cover that at the end of the video. Options. What do we have in options? Normal. Time limit on, music on. Okay. Let's go for that to start off with. Start. Versus, 2-player, which is good. Return, I guess, takes you back to the menu, and then arcade mode. Let's go for arcade. So we have 4 characters to play with at the moment. Can we play her? No, we can't play her yet. This guy looks pretty evil. We'll go with the main character. He seems to be the main guy, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. Try him. So this has Street Fighter special moves in it, in terms of how you pull off a special move. So like a forward fireball or a hurricane kick. So we'll try some of those. Looks cool. I tell you what, straight off the bat, this is the most responsive fighter. This is the most responsive indie dev fighter I've played so far. These kicks and punches feel very, very good. I mean, this is better than some of the fighters that are on the Mega Drive. You know, it's not AAA. It's not AAA, but it's very responsive. Like if you tournament total fighters. Teenage Mutant Ninja Tournament Fighters, that feels very laggy and slow and stiff, whereas this feels very fluid, very responsive, which is really cool. Right, what was that? I didn't see his name. Was it Shadow or something? So yeah, the combat feels great. I think some of the, like that sweep there, it feels lovely. Looks a little bit odd. Looks a little bit kind of stiff. And things like the background here are a little bit dark. You know, if they spent a little bit of time just getting these backgrounds right, they'd have a really good fighter on their hands. But yeah, really, really easy to pull off these special moves, which is great. And I can't stress enough how good it feels, like how responsive these attacks feel. They don't feel stiff. Doesn't feel like I'm having to contort my fingers and the pad into some weird position to pull off these moves. Versus myself. Am I going to have a color swap here? No. Okay, we've got no color swap either. Kind of want a color swap on that. Okay, so we got light punches, heavy punches. light kicks, heavy kicks. Normal, super easy, by the way. So they definitely got to just get the AI a little bit tuned, I think, before they release it. I like how the announcer tells you what move you've done. Like I said, some of the moves look a little stiff. They feel great. The moves feel brilliant. But just a little, the animation feels a little bit stiff. Right, let's take a deeper look at Lunatic Fighters. Fighters are probably the hardest genre to develop for. They require a huge amount of skill to get the combat gameplay feeling responsive and enjoyable. They also need to look the part. Character animation needs to reinforce the attacks that are happening on screen and back up the combat gameplay. Character design and the backgrounds of the world can reinforce the universe that you've created for your fighter, and of course the overall presentation. Good fighters are renowned for their loading screens, character select screens, and just the way they feel and present themselves. The best fighters on the Mega Drive and Genesis all had multi-million-dollar budgets and were often ports of arcade mega hits that had even more money spent on them. Even the bad fighters on the console had significant spend behind them, and so attempting to create a fighter, even a modern fighter, is a massive undertaking. There have been a few notable attempts on the Mega Drive, and with each new indie-developed fighter, the genre gets closer to replicating those AAA experiences of the 90s. Lunatic Fighters is the next game to try, and from what I've played on this demo today, the needle has been moved a little nearer to a AAA indie-developed fighter. Most indie fighters are going the Mortal Kombat route, as this is arguably the easier to develop for, rather than the fluidity and space control of Street Fighter 2. Lunatic Fighters is taking the same inspirations as Insane Pain did, with its Killer Instinct pre-rendered characters that are digitized and pre-rendered. The characters look more detailed than Insane Pain, but do need a little bit of cleanup, especially on the edges. Combat gameplay is where Lunatic Fighters shines. Whilst the animations are lacking in frames and the poses do look a little stiff in some places, the responsiveness and the feeling you've made contact is excellent. The best I've played of any of the indie dev fighters, and of quite a few of the original fighters on the console. Special move controls are Street Fighter inspired, and easy to do if you're used to playing Street Fighter 2 on the console. It uses all 6 buttons from what I can tell, with combinations of heavy and light kicks and punches. There's also a special bar, but I don't know what this does at the moment. The AI is fairly simple. Changing the difficulty of the game doesn't seem to make a difference yet, and getting this right will be vital to how the game feels. Many of the current indie dev fighters struggle getting the difficulty curve right. They all seem to start you off fighting a character with the AI turned up to 11, and so you're not really eased into the game, but rather thrown into every fight as if it's the final boss. If the team can get the difficulty curve solved, then they will have a very good fighter on their hands. It can be hard to tell people how good a fighter is, as it's all about feel and pace. You only really know you enjoy a fighter once you've got the controller in your hand and you've played through the roster of characters. It's something you need to experience. But what might help contextualize Lunatic Fighters is if I compare it against the current lineup of indie fighters and then against a selection of original fighters on the Sega Genesis. So how does it compare to Fight for Vengeance, Go For It, and Insane Pain? Well, bear in mind that Go For It is still in development. This is how it currently stacks up. In terms of graphics, it's showing a lot of potential, but the characters need some work. Poses need to be less stiff, and a few more frames would help. Also, the backgrounds need a lot of improvement. It's ahead of Fight for Vengeance, but just behind Go For It, which has a cleaner pixel art style, and quite a bit behind Insane Pain. While Lunatic Fighters is way more detailed than Insane Pain, the quality of the artwork is excellent. The characters, backgrounds, and overall presentation in Insane Pain is very clean and polished. You can see a lot of work went into the art for this game. However, when it comes to gameplay, Lunatic Fighters is on top, and by quite a bit. Fight for Vengeance was a good effort, but is clunky, slow, and unresponsive. Next up would be Insane Pain, where the combat is very stiff and at times it feels like you're fighting with the controller, trying to get moves out of it. Go For It is marginally better with increased speed, better implemented specials, and a sense that you're controlling the fighting space, but it also feels chaotic at times and not always responsive. Lunatic Fighters, though, feels very responsive. They have implemented some good specials, although not necessarily visually exciting. They do feel like they're making contact and doing damage. Standard attacks feel very fluid compared to the others, and at times I forgot this was an indie title. Now, when compared to the original fighters on the Mega Drive, it doesn't make the AAA band, but it's better than some of the bigger IPs out there and sits for me nicely in the middle. I think if the team can get the presentation better, they'll have a fighter that is starting to creep up on Eternal Champions. So Lunatic Fighters is available in Brazil. It's on the Brazil's version, I guess, of Kickstarter. I'll put the link in the description, but check with the team first to see if they're shipping overseas as well. The game isn't finished yet, but most of the components are there. It's expected to come out in July 2024, with most of the work going into character development and creating new fighters. I'd say if the team had time, there's a few things they could look at fixing up. Things like presentation, background. See if we can get some of those poses looking a little bit more natural. Combat gameplay is so fluid, this has the potential to be one of the best indie fighters developed to date. That's all we have for this week's show. Remember, if you enjoy what you see, if you love the Mega Drive and Genesis or retro gaming, that you can subscribe by clicking a little button just below this video. And it always helps us grow the channel if you leave that little thumbs up, drop down into the comments and leave us your thoughts. And of course, share the video would be great. But until our next show, I'll see you later.